I would separate two things. There's, I think, inevitably, as we, talk about AI in the future, this kind of sci-fi sheen on the whole thing, and that's, in a way, it's helpful as a metaphor, but also it can be distracting because, it just kind of conjures everyone's mind into this kind of, future dreamy mode. But I think there's some things that are real. One thing that's real is that every 3 months we make a model that's smarter than the model we made before, and indeed the models are slowly getting to where they're better than most humans at most things. Maybe at some point better than all humans than all things. The other thing I think is real is the model is not building itself in the sense that like I have a specific copy of the model that's like making a specific copy of the next model. We don't have our self-replicating nanobots or robots or whatever. But what absolutely is happening is that within Anthropic and elsewhere, we are using Claude to help build products on top of Claude and to help train the next Claude, to help serve Claude faster. 6 months ago, I made this prediction that in 6 months, 90% of code would be written by AI models. Some people think that prediction is wrong, but within Anthropic and within a number of companies that we work with, that is absolutely true. Now,
So you're saying that 90% of all code at Anthropic's being written by the model today?
On many teams, not uniformly everywhere.
Is that something that you kind of provided something kind of something auditable around that, or like shown how that's happened?
Yeah, the teams play an editing and supervisory role. But Claude can both, you can say, write this feature and Claude will do it, and the human kind of looks over the code or asks for help from another model or another copy of Claude. The other thing is sometimes we have these long-running bugs. When we were training the most recently released Claude, it was like, the cluster was broken, there was this bug, engineers were spending a few days on it. And we just went to Claude and we said, I don't know, just kind of play around with the cluster and see if you can figure out what's wrong. And Claude found this just super obscure bug that the engineers had missed. So this was one area where it was like Claude is like having a very talented teammate.
So if Claude is now writing 90% of all of the code in Anthropic, do you need less engineers if 90% of all the code? When will it be 95% or 99%?
Yeah, so I think people can misinterpret it as like Claude writing 90% of the code means we're firing 90% of the software engineers. But if you're familiar with the principle of
you have made some very aggressive comments around firing executives. I just want to put 2 and 2 together to get 4. Okay.
If
one thing I've learned in knowing you for so long is I have to come back and kind of like get that qualifying question again,
yes.
Because you're going fast. So I'm trying to keep up with you, and it's amazing. But I want to just make sure I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. Let me take them one by one. So, under comparative advantage, if Claude is writing 90% of the code, what that means usually is you need just as many software engineers. You might need more because they can then be more leveraged. They can focus on the 10% that's editing the code or writing the 10% that's the hardest, or supervising a group of AI models. And so what happens is you can just end up being 10 times more productive because the remaining 10% is now a complement to the AI system that's getting much better at what it's producing. So
it's a rebalancing of the work, is what you're really saying. It's not a replacement.
It's not a replacement, it's a rebalancing.
Okay.
Now, as that 90% goes to 95, 99, totally automated end-to-end, there may be some point at which all bets are off.
What's your time frame for that? It's a pretty big jump there.
It's very hard to say. Okay. But we're looking at it closely. We're always looking for ways to encourage complementarity.
You see that in the short term or the long term? Is that a 5-year goal or a 1-year goal?
I'm optimistic about
a 10-year goal.
I'm optimistic about complementarity in the short run. I do worry as we get out to 2 years, 5 years, that across the economy, not that there won't be anything for humans to do, but that there will be enough disruption that will have a kind of labor disruption that is, not fundamentally different from what we've seen with previous technologies, but that operates faster, that is broader across the economy because it relates to all cognitive.
You think that's in the next 2 to 5 years?
2 to 5 years, I would say.
Okay. And at what point, just coming back to my previous question, at what point is Anthropic, the model, writing 100% of the code?
Yeah, again, it's a tricky question because maybe even if the model's writing 100% of the code, the humans are still supervising the model or prompting it or clarifying.
So there's still something for us to do. Model supervisors.
Comparative advantage is it's a surprisingly clever thing. I am concerned particularly about people's ability to adapt as the jobs are changing fast. As the jobs are changing so fast. But comparative advantage is powerful. That's going to be one of our tools in this.
Well, you've mentioned healthcare several times, but we've seen these kind of very conflicting studies recently in healthcare around accuracy, especially. Because these are word models, there seems to be some level of accuracy that's not 100%. And we're, and then when applied to some of these kind of other things like radiology is one where we saw these very interesting, studies where we just didn't see the accuracy of a radiologist reflected in what the model was doing. Is that how you see it going forward, or how did you reflect back on that?
Yeah, I would say where we are now is, I think of the models, and I think a lot of people who use the models in practice.
You know where I'm going, right? Where
yeah,
I'm trying to like understand where are we really in the evolution of the model?
Where's the arc? So I think a lot of, I think, and a lot of the people who use the models in practice, I think of the models as maybe a bit like a second opinion, right? Where you don't necessarily trust them alone. Just like if a doctor says something to me, I don't necessarily take that as fact. They're an expert, and they're often right, but they're not always right. I'll tell you.
Especially in this one category, radiology.
Yeah,
it seems strange, like it just can't get its. I was going to say can't get its head around it, but that's not really the right metaphor. But
doesn't have it.
There is something about either it doesn't have enough data or it's not getting. It's too nuanced. What is it?
Yeah, so let me actually tell you a story about one case where it did work. So we're talking about founding the company with my sister. She recently had her second child. While she was pregnant, pregnancy can suppress your immune system. Was viral. For some reason, it didn't occur to any of them that it could be a bacterial infection. She took all of her data. She uploaded it to Claude, and Claude systematically listed the possibilities in the way that the doctors had somehow missed.
That is amazing, right? How many of us have already used the models in some way to look at our healthcare? Raise your hand. Yeah, I think we're all having exactly that.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Where you can kind of say, especially, how many of you are the hypochondriacs that are doing that? Raise your hand. Yeah, I got a few. Okay, I know I'm.
But here's the point, which is, Claude listed possibilities. If she had just blindly taken the advice of Claude, that would not have gone well. Claude was good for saying, hey, have you considered this? Have you considered that? So it has this assistive, augmentative ability.
Especially in regards to words, right? It's very good on words.
Words, yeah. I mean, this specialized stuff of reading images, like, I think that's more about specialized models. Like, if you don't have the right data, maybe it's not doing well again. It's less reflective of the overall.
Is that the crux to the issue, like in radiology? Because like when we're saying it's going to improve healthcare, but we also saw this weird study where doctors who were using the models, in some cases, were relying too much of the models and then ending up with bad outcomes. On the other side, then we saw models that were like trying to read radiology, but then were not able to achieve accuracy. There was like this kind of strange bifurcation between the two things.
Yeah, I think there's a lot still left to work out in what the role of the human is and what the role of the model is. And of course that's changing as the models improve rapidly. But, I think it's something you often see in new technologies where there's this great technology and then these practical issues of exactly how do you use it, exactly how do you interact with it, they take surprisingly long to work out. And, if you look back at, the early days when people, deployed new technologies, I don't know. It's often.
So you think this is going to be about humans and agents working together?
Yeah, no, exactly. Just the collaboration model needs to be worked out a bit more than it has in these practical areas. Code is good to point to. Like, code happens so fast, right? Developers are early adopters. And so that cycle, we've gone through it in like months, right? You can see people talking in blog posts about, oh, what's the best way to use Claude Code? Do I want it to suggest and I make edits, or I write code and it makes edits? And these people riff off each other. And, over the course of 3 or 4 months, they work out what the best way to use Claude Code is. I think that same thing is happening in healthcare and radiology, but because there are a lot of barriers in these industries, because they're high stakes, that process is working itself out much slower.
So that's really kind of getting down to it, right? That it's a collaborative thing. And like, here's the best way to use Claude Code. Claude Code is writing the code, but here's really the best way as a developer now to work on Claude Code. It's not writing 100% of the code. It's writing code. Now I'm like checking, and now I'm gonna have to maintain the code. I'm gonna have to provide all the capabilities, the whole infrastructure around the code. Is this the right way to think about it?
I think that's the right way to think about it right now. As the models get stronger, then the collaboration may change to more distant supervision by the human. So it's very hard to say what will happen even 6 months from now. But I think what you've said is a very accurate description of where we are now, as of as of Sonnet 4.5, which was the latest model released at.
Which is probably one of the best coders that we've seen, right?
We have these benchmarks that are like, what fraction of, a random sample of GitHub PRs can this thing write from a description? And that's over the last year and a half, that's gone from like 5%, which was basically the thing can't code at all, to something like, 77%. So it's really.
And it's also yielding also this whole other ecosystem of things on top of it as well. Like even we showed Agentforce 5s yesterday that I think our customers will benefit from, or other, other tools, Lovable, these things have been built on these things, right? Has that been a surprise to you to see a whole ecosystem on top of the model?
I mean, that's been great to see. There are many different models, right? If you look at the GitHub Copilots of the world, that's kind of complementary to GitHub. If you look at the Cursors of the world, that's kind of an IDE model. If you look at the Lovables and Replets, that's more of a consumer model that allows people who are not traditionally software developers to write code. There's like a, Vercel is like a different way of looking at it, Augment Code, Windsurf, there's a whole ecosystem. And then there's the command line tools like Claude Code. So I think it's too early to say, what's going to be the winner there, or even if there is one winner. It's just possible there's just different things that work for different people or different.
There's a whole civilization.
There's a whole ecosystem.
Capability,
yeah.
Right? It's a whole civilization. Like it's broader. Like it's really coming across the whole span. It's really impressive. It's so fundamental that it's able to yield all this incredible innovation from others.
Yeah, no,
Which one of those is the most, like, the one you did not expect?
Which one is the one that I most did not expect? I think the model of kind of allowing people to write code end to end, like allowing non-coders to write code, it totally makes sense once I see it, and it's doing really well as a business model. But I just, when I was conceptualizing, the
Which
model.
product do you love the best?
Yeah, this is one of those questions that it's your customers are like your children. You really shouldn't give an answer, so I'm not going to give an answer.
All right, so are you getting a sense for Dario, by the way? Are you getting a sense for Dario? Okay. So I'm trying to help them to understand you and how you're thinking about this and where we're going. So now here you are, you're an entrepreneur, you've left OpenAI, this thing is taking off, it's you and Daniela, you're in the Slack building, where is it gonna be in 5 years? What does it look like? We've seen 0 to 5 years. Now, you don't have to tell me as an investor, and there's nobody going to hold you accountable for it. But if you just fantasized out, and now it's not 2025, but it's 2030, and where's Anthropic? What does it look like? Forget about all the other companies and all the other competitors, whatever. Nobody cares. where's Anthropic 5 years from now? What's your dream?
Yeah.
What's your big dream?
So, I think maybe one of the best ways to think about this is, I wrote this essay called Machines of Loving Grace, where it was written from a societal perspective, but, of course, the company is trying to enact that and contribute to it, and so you can back out from that where we hope the company will be. So, I really thought of it as like the upside of AI, right? There's lots of concerns with AI. I'm one of the loudest in voicing them, but I am incredible believer in the upside of AI. I think more so than people who code or describe themselves as more optimistic. I have just a really expansive view. I am perhaps most excited about what it can do for curing diseases. Going back to my background in biology, we look at these tough diseases like cancer, like Alzheimer's, various kinds of metabolic disease. I just think AI is the right thing to cure them. And so I think of all the work we can do working with pharmaceutical companies, working with scientific research institutions, and working with the healthcare system to kind of enact it out. And, again, our partnership is about regulated industries. And one of the regulated industries, I think especially, is healthcare. But, that is one of the most positive applications. But I think that we will see applications across the industry. I'm very excited about financial services. I'm very excited about insurance. I'm very excited about taking basically every enterprise and learning to serve every enterprise with smarter and smarter models. And the skill ceiling is very high. One way to say it is, what is an enterprise? It's kind of a superintelligence, right? It is an entity that acts in the world in a way with a level of strategy and knowledge and power in the world that goes far beyond what any individual human can do. So, even as these models get smarter than any individual human, there's a ceiling substantially higher than that in terms of doing the things that a company tries to do in the world. Most of which are good for the world, most of which create economic value. And so then my vision of Anthropic is a company that serves the enterprise of the world, that transforms every enterprise, puts AI at the center of every enterprise. I think I won't give specific numbers, but if you think about the actual market potential of that, it's very, very high, right? Our revenue has been going up 10x per year. It's currently, I think it was reported this morning, which I'm happy to confirm is correct, is approaching 7 billion run rate. That's gone up 10x a year for the last 3 years. It can't continue like that for much longer, of course. But
as an investor, I'm looking forward to the $70 billion year next year.
I was like, not feel bad investing at $4 billion. You should not feel bad.
All right.
But I think the potential is very large. But I think even more important than that, or perhaps even necessary to that success, we want to be known for the company that is trustworthy, the company that behaves responsibly, the company that has a reputation for doing what it says, saying what it does, and building products that are trustworthy. That if you build on us, you won't get any surprises. You won't get anything crazy. You won't get the model, saying it's Hitler. You won't get, all kinds of, you won't get all kinds of crazy stuff. And I think that's very important to us, being good stewards of this.
Are there certain companies that you're trying to imply that might be?
None whatsoever.
There's an entrepreneur down in Palo Alto.
None at all. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, I see. That's a certain letter in the alphabet.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, well, it's before the letter Y.
Sorry, I still don't know what you mean.
Okay, one more thing. I'm going to use moderator privilege here and take a couple extra minutes with you. So, number one, we see right now a tremendous fever on building data centers. And, we've seen a tremendous fever around the chips, the financing, the size and scale of the data centers, the energy of the data centers. You haven't really addressed it in your comments per se, besides the scaling laws, but let's talk about it just in part and parcel to Anthropic. And when you think about, obviously, one of your core partners has been Amazon. It's been very important for your growth, a very important company. Even though you do have, obviously relationship with others as well, but that one has been especially important to you. Just give us a vision of what's happening with these data centers right now. What are we going to see in the next few years with these data centers? And how do you think about it as an entrepreneur who's going to need data centers to grow? Who will you go to? How will you do it? Will you build your own? Will you just continue to partner? What is your plan?
Yeah, so my view is that there is going to be an enormous need for compute for all the reasons that that we've laid out, right? The scaling laws suggest that we're going to need more and more compute to train smarter and smarter models, and then as the revenue goes up, we're going to need to serve more. We're going to need to serve more of our models. So when that revenue is not 7 billion but 100 billion or more, and when model training requires millions of chips, we're going to need many gigawatts of power to train the models. So we're trying to secure that power basically wherever we can, and I'm confident in the company's ability to do so. I do get a bit worried when the press focuses too much on the building of the data centers and deals to build data centers. Some of these deals seem a little bit fishy. They seem like they're maybe double counting. And I also worry, again...
Deals are you talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
Who is double counting? These are all public companies. We're going to want to know who's double counting.
I don't know. I don't know anything more than
What about the ones who are doing triple counting?
I don't... There might be some of that too.
Oh, wow. All right.
I don't know. But look, at the end of the day, all this data center stuff is spending money, right? I think the thing that's most important is making money. And so this is why I focus on, the revenue and the actual work that we're doing with businesses. Anthropic is growing faster than any other company in this space. The revenue is growing faster. And I think basically if the demand is there, if customers want the money and they're willing to pay you, then you are willing to pay your compute providers, and you'll get the compute you need at the end of the day.
Dario, we could not be more grateful for you to be here, to be in San Francisco, to be a native son, and to Daniela as well, and for everything that you're doing with Anthropic. Congratulations. Please give Dario a round of applause.